Yo. Hey, if you have ever heard of gyno or gynecomastia, I've got my buddy Brian here, and we're actually going to be talking about his personal experience going through gyno surgery. Why did he have to have gyno surgery? Like, what happened with his gear or his uh, steroids or whatever the case is that he was actually like, I need gyno surgery? And then what was that surgery like? As well as what did he use to heal faster? Brian, what's good, man? It's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, good to see you again too. So yeah, I had a gyno surgery recently, and that was a lot of fun.
So for why did you have to have gyno surgery? Do you know like the cycle that it was, or was it just like over a long period of time?
So it was a combination of things. It was Superdrol was the steroid I was using that caused the gynecomastia. I did several cycles of it over the years between the time I was about 19 to 23. And a lot of guys don't realize that it causes a prolactin kickback. And most guys, monitor estrogen levels throughout a cycle and keep estrogen levels under control, but not a lot of guys actually check prolactin. And so that's where I came up having an issue. I wasn't monitoring prolactin levels or controlling them at all, and that caused the gynecomastia.
Superdrol. I've never used Superdrol before. Is that kind of like Anadrol?
It's very similar to Anadrol, but it doesn't have the estrogenic side effects that Anadrol would. So it's dry.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't convert at all. Like Anadrol doesn't large amounts convert?
Yeah, depending on the person, some guys can have a high estrogen conversion with Anadrol.
And was it that, do you think, that caused the prolactin sides, or was it just the combination of several different things all working together that caused your prolactin to be high?
I think it was the Superdrol specifically. I did quite a bit of research into it, and a lot of guys were doing labs post-cycle and documented that 2 weeks post-cycle, their prolactin levels spiked like off the charts. And so looking back, I think that's what happened to me because I was running an AI on pretty much every cycle.
And you didn't think to, right? Well, I mean, we don't think about these things until like after we either experience it or we like hear from Brian that like, oh, this shit got me fucked up, and now I need to check my prolactin levels.
Right. Well, and that goes back. Lately, I've been talking about the necessity to do labs before, during, and after a cycle, and that's exactly where I screwed up on this one. Is because I wasn't doing labs, and so I never thought of prolactin. So I started getting itchy, swollen, chest, nipples. And I was starting to freak out. I was like, okay, so I need to start taking AIs. And I'm taking AI, and it's not doing anything for me. And it's getting worse and worse and worse. And yeah, eventually, solidified and had to get surgery.
How long does that like take from like when you notice something to be like it's an issue? Was it a course of a year and a half or something? Because it's subtle. A lot of like you talk to guys, I'm sure, and they're like, "Hey, I think I have gyno related or gyno," and they're like, they'll send you a fucking picture on Instagram, and you're like, "You can't tell, bro." Like when you,
right.
You know what I mean? So how quickly does it happen? Was it over the course of 2 months? Was it over the course of 3 years?
I think it was about 6 months post cycle. So right after the cycle ended, I got really itchy. My nipples got puffy, and then like I said, puffy. So it was like swollen almost looking. Right, and super itchy, sensitive, and then after one of the cycles, they actually lactated a little bit, which kind of freaked me out. It was like a clear fluid with black stuff in it. That really freaked me out. And
so was that like, because I've seen guys do this, and I probably tried to do this. I remember doing this a long time ago. But basically, for anybody listening, I'm pinching my nipple, and then you kind of like you're like, I guess that's how you milk a cow, and you kind of like, was it like that where you'd get like, because I've had a tiny little bits of like almost like a clear fluid-ish. It's like clear, but it's kind of like ambery-ish or something. I don't know how to describe it, I guess.
So yeah, and that's typical of prolactin. If you do some research into that, prolactin was causing you to lactate. So over about 6 months after I started getting itchy nipples, it started to solidify. And over the preceding cycles, after running Superdrol multiple times, it grew each time. And then it would initially start out as being puffy, itchy, and then the puffy, itchy would go away, and that lump underneath would get bigger and harder.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so did you at what point on the number of cycles did you think, or be like, let me just dive a little bit deeper into this to see if anybody. At what point was that?
That was actually, that didn't even occur to me. Like, I was really young back then. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I was freaked out. And so, like I said, I was just taking AIs and not knowing why they weren't working for me. And it wasn't until recently when I started getting into researching, different stuff a little bit more scientifically and doing labs like I should have been doing back then, that I realized that that's what was going on. And so I started researching on Superdrol and saw that some guys were saying it was causing a spike in prolactin and causing gyno issues. So that got me to dig into prolactin a little bit, and I learned about that. And then to test it, I took some Superdrol. I think this was probably, a year ago or whatever. And I took Caber post-cycle, and I didn't have any of the side effect issues that I'd had in the past from it. So,
when you would take Superdrol, say you're doing it for 8 weeks or 12 weeks or something, you don't notice the itchy nipples or any of like the little bit of lactation or anything until you're done with the cycle.
correct. Yeah, it would be about 2 weeks afterwards, then it'd start getting puffy and itchy.
And then after some period of time, that would just go away, and you'd be like, "Oh, okay, cool." And just like, I wonder why this AI from this one guy's not working properly, or whatever the case is, kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Okay. Well, I tried tamoxifen, Clomid, all these other anything, all these SERMs, AIs, and just nothing was helping. And then over the years, as it kind of solidified and grew, after multiple cycles, I went and saw a couple of doctors, and of course, I was going to the VA back then, and they're completely useless as a medical facility. So the doctor's literally on Google in the checking in the patient room there with me. He's on Google trying to figure out what's going on with me. I'm like, God, this is the wrong place.
Yeah, you're going to have a better idea of what's going on than he does when it comes to PEDs, at least, and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. And so they prescribed me tamoxifen. They're like, oh, well, this should get rid of it. This should reverse it. And I mean, pretty much anybody who's got it knows that once it's solidified, you're not going to reverse it with tamoxifen. If you catch it when it's still in the initial itchy, puffy phase, you can stop it with tamoxifen. But usually, once you realize what's going on, it's too late.
I've heard some really good reports with roloxifene, right? So that's also a SERM, but just not very popular relative to tamoxifen, right? But I've heard some good reports on that, but haven't like, I remember reading on it a while back, but I haven't really dove into understanding the nuanced difference between tamoxifen and roloxifene. Is that something that you looked into? Because there's a decent number of reports that say like, hey, yeah, if you take 30 milligrams twice a day of roloxifene for X number of weeks or months, a lot of times you can shrink your shit, right, in terms of the puffiness, or shrink the size of the build up underneath your nipple or whatever the case is. Do you know anything about that at all, by any chance?
Yeah, I did research it a little bit before I got my surgery, and I decided it wasn't really a good option for me for a couple of reasons. Yeah, there are a lot of reports of it reversing gyno, but mine was pretty significant. I mean, I'm talking under my left side, it was probably about, that big around, and then about that thick. And you could feel it underneath my nipple. You could squeeze it, and it was a pretty substantial mass. So I figured by the time the roloxifene was able to actually dissolve that, it'd be a pretty significant cycle of the stuff. I did see some reports of there being some blood clotting issues related to it. And so I figured it wasn't worth the risk. On top of that, having that gland still be there would be a problem down the road if something else was to come along, like if I wanted to run DECA or Anadrol or, Superdrol or whatever down the road, I'd still have to worry about taking all these products, Caber, whatever else to block the prolactin. And that's just more stuff into your body that wouldn't be needed if the gland was just gone.
Yeah. Can you give, because we're talking about it because we know about this, but there's going to be people who are listening who don't necessarily have the same context that we have related to prolactin. Like, maybe touch on estrogen a little bit, and then prolactin, like what they are and why, we not necessarily why we have it, but why that's an issue with this stuff. Like, because we know what prolactin is, but not everybody does. And estrogen can cause, man boobs, but so can prolactin.
Right. Well, they're both important. Prolactin, actually, if you crash your prolactin levels, it can give you sexual dysfunction issues, just like if you crash your estrogen level, right? Or if you crash your testosterone. So those three hormones are all something that need to be balanced together. I think the biggest issue that gets overlooked in industry, really. I mean, obviously, guys don't think about prolactin really, right? But everybody goes out and attacks estrogen. That's the first thing everybody does when they're running a cycle of something. They go out and attack estrogen, and they just smash their estrogen levels, which reduces the gains. It can cause, all kinds of side effects, dry skin, acne issues, sexual dysfunction issues when your estrogen level is crashed. And guys often are running cycles without doing labs. They're crashing their estrogen level. They got a high prolactin level, and then afterwards they got no testosterone to top it off. So, it's kind of a trifecta of issues if you're not doing labs.
Okay, especially because you just see guys do testosterone and say DECA or test and trend, and then they'll go get, if most guys are not getting labs done, but if they get labs done, they're definitely not getting prolactin done. And we know that, DECA and trend can affect prolactin levels. And I don't know about anadrol, but you said Superdrol could, so wouldn't be surprised if there's, because I don't know how it exactly works in the body, but I thought I saw something where there's a little bit of correlation between estrogen E2 and prolactin levels or something along those lines. But
yeah, there have been some talk in the forums about how if you control estrogen levels, the E2, it can't convert into prolactin. It can reduce conversion from estrogen to prolactin, which in my case, obviously that didn't work. It does seem like prolactin is independent to some degree from the estrogen levels, especially if you've got no estrogen in your body and you're still having prolactin side effects from it being too high. So I'm not really sure how that, comes about exactly, to be honest. But I do know that it is independent, despite what a lot of guys are saying. And so it's not necessarily 100% independent.
Yes, correct.
Right. If I didn't take an AI, it may have been way worse, right? But I don't know.
It probably would have been way worse, right? If you hadn't taken an AI and you had high estrogen, right? Because you can get
both of them together would have been bad.
Real bad. And then you would have like sexual related issues as well. Okay. So you're on this journey and then at what point do you get fed up or just being like, okay, cool. I'm finally fucking ready. I need to take care of this thing.
I was fed up from the get-go on it. It's bothered me for, a solid 10 years now. It's just something I couldn't get done, couldn't afford it, because it's really expensive and insurance doesn't want to cover it because it's cosmetic. It's not considered a medical condition. So it's basically, a cost issue is holding me back on it. But it's bothered me ever since I got it. It hasn't really increased at all over the last 10 years. But as I started leaning out here over the last year or so, it was becoming more and more obvious. It got to where, especially on the left side, you could see that lump underneath my nipple when I have my shirt off, or even through my shirt, that left nipple was like protruding, in an awkward way because of that mass underneath of it holding it out. And I was just like, okay, if I'm going to be, in this industry, especially if I'm ever going to do a competition, I need to get rid of this because it's just way too distracting. And then there's problems like you're doing a bench press or whatever, come down your chest a little bit low and you hit it and then it hurts, right? So it's just uncomfortable.
Oh, fuck. And so how much does this actually cost to get done? I'm going to see if I can pull up a couple images so that we can actually take a look.
Yeah, there's some cool YouTube videos on the procedure being done, but it really depends. It seems like the going price right now is somewhere around 14 grand on average. Anywhere between, I've heard people saying $8,500, but I wasn't able to find anybody local that would do it that low. A couple of the doctors I called started at 14 and went up from there, depending on what happened in the consultation.
Wow, $14,000 to get it done. Damn, that makes sense why you were fucking waiting.
Yeah, it was a
insurance doesn't cover any of it.
No, they covered the labs and that was it.
Fuck, damn.
Yeah.
So $14,000
surgery.
Yep, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it was a 2.5 hour surgery, and I wound up with drain tubes for over a week because of it. Just waiting for all the drainage from that surgery to subside, and it was definitely not recommended or fun.
And you when you were doing the surgery, were you awake?
No, I was out cold.
Okay, because I feel like I definitely wouldn't want to be awake during that.
No, so there are some doctors who do it with just local anesthetic. My doctor kind of he went beyond what most doctors will do, because a lot of guys will go get gyno surgery done from their local surgeon, whatever, and all they do is cut the gland out, right? So my doctor actually, he cut the gland out, but then he also did lipo all the way around the gland, so that in the future, if my body fat ever goes up, if he just cut the gland out, there would be a dimple where it had been, because there's no fat cells where the dimple was, or where that gland was. So if he cuts that out and there's no fat cells there, then you wind up with a dimple in your chest.
So like, just so I'm understanding this, right? Because you've got like your chest, and if you have the mammary gland or whatever that it's called, and if you cut out that gland, then it's just empty space there. So there's fat around it on either side, but then if you were to say get heavier over at some period in your life, then the fat already there is going to grow, and then there's going to be a spot that is basically just missing. So your nipples just basically going to be sucked in. Effectively, right. Am I understanding that?
Right, because you got your gland sitting in amongst a bunch of fat cells, and then so he basically did the lipo, took all those fat cells out from around that dimple and brought them all down to the same height.
So do you feel like your chest is a lot smaller now?
I don't feel like it's a ton smaller. It is noticeably smaller, but in a good way, because it was looking like breasts, right? And now, I can go get in front of the mirror and flex, and I can actually see the serration in my lower chest, which before that was protruding so far, it was like pulling my skin away from my muscle almost. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. So you're in there for 2.5 hours. They cut out the gland, and then he also does basically lipo, right? While you're there. And then you just drive home and start the recovery?
Yeah, my girlfriend drove me home. I was too out of it from being knocked out for 2.5 hours. And then the recovery itself wasn't horrible. I mean, it was the side effects of the drugs wearing off and all that, which was not fun. But other than having the drain tubes were the worst part of it. So
why? I was trying to pull up your Instagram to see if you had a picture pulled up. There is one picture that I saw, but it looks just super actually painful. But
yeah, I'm not sure how to send you a picture on here.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
What this does look like a breast. Yes.
Yeah. So that's obviously post surgery, and it's swollen there, but you can see the bruising there from where he did the lipo all the way around that gland.
Oh, okay. Oh, so the bruising is actually caused by the lipo. All around your nipple?
Right. Yeah.
Damn. And then, and I see the tube on the side there.
Yeah. So you can kind of see the outline on my chest right there, kind of circular above and around the nipple.
Whoops.
And you can see a circle there in the bruising. That's the outline. I was saying you can kind of see on my above and around my nipple there. There's kind of a circle in the bruising. That's where the gland was.
Oh, right across where like the Band-Aid is above it, and yeah, okay, I see that.
Yeah,
okay.
And then right above that, where it kind of the bruising arcs like this, coming around. So where it's not bruised right there around my nipple is where the gland was.
Oh wow, damn! And then just to make it like you were saying, even they did the liposuction all around there. Okay, interesting. Okay, so you get, because we also wanted to potentially get into some Liver King a little bit later, and maybe I eat raw liver, so we can talk about some of that in a few minutes. But this, you get home, right? This is how many weeks ago that let me see, when was this posted? This is 4 weeks ago, right?
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm completely cleared up now. There's no more bruise or anything like that. So you can still see on my left side, there's still a little bit of a blood clot in there that's dissolving. But other than that, I mean, all the bruising's cleared up. I'm back to working out. They'd said originally like 6 to 8 weeks before I could go back to the gym. I started working out last week. So that was 3 weeks, a full 3 weeks after my surgery.
Oh, wow. Okay. So he's like, you're going to be out for 6 weeks or 8 weeks, which when somebody tells like somebody like yourself, I'm assuming, or me, right, I'm assuming you've been doing this for 20, like I've been doing this for over 20 years, right? So it's been doing this for a long time. And if somebody's like, oh, you have to take like 2 months off from working out, it's not something that I particularly enjoy doing, like, because it's an addiction to us to go to the gym, just like it's an addiction to like fat people to eat shitty fucking diets. right? They say it's an addiction to eat shitty food. Cool. Well, we're addicted to going to the gym and taking care of ourselves. And he tells you that you can't go to the gym for 6 to 8 weeks. And then you're back in the gym after 3 weeks. That's incredible. You had mentioned before that you were actually using some peptides and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I obviously didn't want to be out of the gym for that long. So I started using the combination of BPC 157 and TB 500. And I was applying it to my chest. And I've been told, or I've researched, that there's a lot of local benefits to those products, the localized effects in the healing. I've used it before on like my elbows. I'd injected my elbows and stuff like that in the past to recover from tennis elbow and things like that. But I wanted to do a little experiment on the recovery locally, and especially since my entire chest was so bruised. So I took an area on my left chest, on the left side of my chest, on my pec, my upper pec, where it was really bruised, and I just started applying it to that one area, and that's where I'd apply it morning and night. And the bruising cleared up there first. The bruising in that spot where I was applying was gone probably, let me think here, within 10 days of the surgery. And I mean, you saw how bad I was bruised there. Within 10 days of the surgery, that area where I'd been applying the stuff was completely clear of bruising. I still had bruising down below my pec where I hadn't applied it, and I still had bruising on my right side, which wasn't as bruised as bad to begin with. So I thought that was pretty significant.
Wow. So you have the left and the right side. The left side was far worse than the right side in terms of the bruising post-surgery. Right. And you took the BPC topical and the TB 500 topical, and you're applying it to the left side, which was already worse than the right side. And you still had that side recover faster in terms of the bruising went down. I'm assuming there was swelling and there was tenderness. Did that all go down as well?
For the most part, yeah. I mean, there's still that clot underneath. I wasn't applying it to that area, and that still needs to dissolve. That's going away slowly. But other than that, yeah, this cleared up, and I still had bruising on the right side.
Damn, that's incredible. Did you end up talking to the doctor and be like, "Hey, I'm going back to the gym. It's been 3 weeks"?
No, I didn't mention that to him.
How was that getting back into the gym doing chest? What was that like?
So yesterday was my first chest workout. I avoided chest the first week back in the gym, which I started, I think, Wednesday of last week was the first day I actually went and lifted weights. And so yesterday was my first chest workout, and I definitely feel weaker from not lifting, right? But overall, it felt pretty good. I mean, just not having that mass underneath my nipple, that gland there, it felt so much better because, I'm wearing a tighter shirt, and I'm doing my bench press, whatever, and it's not sticking up out of my shirt, so it's not an obvious protrusion anymore, right? Like, I can touch my chest, and the nipples are still a little bit numb, but the sensitivity, I mean, it doesn't hurt to touch my chest like it did before.
Oh, wow. So every time you would accidentally do chest, and the shit would just come down a little bit too.
Or, yeah, like doing a hammer curl with the dumbbell, and you come up with the dumbbell and catch that gland, and then be like, motherfucker, that hurts.
Oh, man. And then also, I know what that's like when, there is, say, there's something that right? Like I started losing my hair when I was fucking 19. So I was slightly more aware of it, but I didn't really give a shit about it until I was like, okay, let me see if I can correct this and solve this for people on YouTube. So I started testing all this stuff, but then I became far more acutely aware of it. And then every time I would see myself, I would see that. And I would assume, maybe not, maybe so, that there was something else mentally going on, so that when you would see yourself in a tight shirt or arching backwards to some degree or stretching up like this, you'd be like, oh, fuck. You'd see that shit.
I mean, it's like you buy a white car and all of a sudden all you see is white cars, right? That the same analogy. So, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, there's a lot of people that I mentioned it to before the surgery, and they're like, oh, well, I didn't even notice that you had gyno, And there are other people that pointed it out right away, like especially on the YouTube channel, guys are dicks. They want to point out everything they possibly can. And they're like, oh, dude, you got breasts, right? So most people probably didn't notice, and then of course you got the dickheads that
do. Yes, YouTube, Instagram, of course you have a lot. Facebook, you have a lot of those fucking people who do that. Right. So that's probably a fucking awesome feeling, though, to go from like that to now it's just fucking gone.
Yeah, it's nice.
Like the mentally to just not, because it's not that you like, really like it's, you know, it is an insecurity of some sort, right? So it's an insecurity of some sort, and then to be able to do one thing, right, and have that flip so quickly and easily, I bet that's a really nice thing to be able to do that. And by just having this conversation with you and now understanding a little bit more of the nuances of how you're thinking about it, um, like I can understand why women get breast implants now. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like it just makes sense. Like they were made fun of for like not having boobs or whatever the case is. They see themselves and they don't see titties or whatever the case is, and then they go through and do that, and it helps like that very very quickly. You know what I mean? To just get rid of that kind of thing. So that's super interesting.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's mostly a mental benefit, I think, for both women and for myself. Either getting it cut out or getting it installed is basically just a personal mental issue, right? It's not like society, for the most part, is out there judging you on it. It's mostly just you in your own head.
1,000%, 1,000%. So when you go back into the gym, right? You said you're going. You feel like you've lost a little bit of strength in there. But so say if you before you went in there, you might be doing 2.25, just for example, whatever it is, right? 2 plates on either side, and then when you go back in, do you feel like timid almost or like shy about going, like do you like, okay cool, I'm gonna get back to 225 to do chest, or and you just couldn't do it, or was it like you had it mentally thinking that you're gonna tear something or hurt something because of the surgery?
Um, I haven't had any of the mental issues as far as being afraid of that. It's more like kind of a stamina issue right now. Um, so everything obviously feels heavier, but normally I'd go into the gym on a day off and I'd work out for an hour and a half, 2 hours without an issue. And now I'm going in there and after an hour it feels like I'm completely exhausted. And my diet's pretty good right now and everything else, so it's probably just that I haven't worked out at all in a month.
Oh really? That's interesting that you're having that, like the reduced stamina.
Yeah, I think some stuff that went into there. Obviously, I had the time off for the surgery, but right before that, I went on vacation for a week, and he told me he was going to be doing the lipo around where the gland came out, and so I was pretty lean at that time. He's like, I need to do lipo around this, but you're almost too lean right now to do it. And so while I was on vacation, I ate like a pig, and then I was eating pretty unhealthy right up to the surgery, trying to gain some body fat, so that when he did that, he could actually get enough of the fat cells out of there for down the road, so it wouldn't be dimpled, right? And so I do have a higher body fat percentage right now than I'm used to running around with, and I think that probably has something to do with it.
Oh interesting. So where are you going right now? And then I wanted to talk about transition to like Liver King, and I know you had mentioned that. So where are you? What's your current goal with your physique right now?
My goal right now is just to get back down body fat wise to somewhere in the 10 to 12% body fat range, which is where I'm most comfortable. Um, Along with that, I want to get back to where I'm lifting fairly heavy again. The strength seems to be coming back pretty quick. Today I was doing my close grip bench press 225 for my triceps. That wasn't an issue at all. I did 3 sets of that as my first heavy set for triceps. So the strength is coming back. Um, so mostly it's just about body composition right now. I do want to start bringing up size in my rear delts and my arms specifically, and then my abs. I need to get those cleaned up for the summer.
One of the things that I felt like I found as a cheat code for bringing up, you know, lagging body parts, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, was, well, maybe a lot longer than this, but I kind of put it together in a different framework. It's 2016 or 2017. I'm in New York City. I'm hanging out with my friend, and she's like, "Oh, I'm from Rochester, New York, but we're in New York City together." So we meet up, we're hanging out, and we're like, "Okay, cool, let's get a picture." So we go take a picture, and then afterwards, she sends me this picture. So I take a look at this picture, and I was wearing a tank top. It's in the summer in New York City, and I look at myself, and I was like, "Fuck, I don't have any goddamn triceps." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna do this a couple more times extra per week." So that was kind of like how it got started with me. And then about 3 years ago, I was like, let me try something where I hit a body part every single day, right? Because people think they watch on YouTube, overtraining is bad. Overtraining is bad. You're not going to be able to make gains if you overtrain. But anything, even steroids, right? They're a tool that can be used in an intelligent way or in a destructive way. The same thing goes with fucking overtraining. So I did a couple experiments where I took measurements. So I did one for legs, chest, and arms. 30 days, every single day, 7 days a week. For 30 days, I would do something at home for legs. Maybe it was probably either 100 lunges or 100 air squats, or just body weight, right? Fucking easy shit, just to increase the blood flow to the area. But bands for your arms, like tricep pushdowns or curls, or push-ups, right? So I did this 1 month, then I waited. Next month I did a different body part, and then I did another one. And I saw, I think I saw about 3/4 of an inch increase in my chest. I saw about 1/3 of an inch increase in my arms. I thought I saw 3/4 of an inch increase in my legs in a 30-day period of time. So I've modified that since then, because doing stuff at home, I don't always do, but I'm doing something where I do 90 days. Oh, another thing that I forgot to mention is every day at the gym, I would do one exercise for whatever it was. So say during the leg thing, on chest day, I would do one exercise of 3 sets for my legs. And I tried to make sure that it was different. So it wasn't always the same thing. And it wasn't like I'm doing fucking lunges with 2 1/4 or anything like that. It was like, okay, I'm going to do something and I'll do like a set of 20. Like something like a voluminous thing just to increase the blood flow into those areas. So now I break it down on a quarterly basis. So the first quarter of the year, I'm not doing measurements now, but the first quarter of the year, I primarily did quads. And now, like my quads, I'm seeing feathering in them, like in the teardrop, but also in the outer quad. And then this quarter that just ended, I did arms, but I actually cut it short. So instead of 90 days, it was closer to maybe 65, 70 days, because I was getting a little bit of like tenderness in my elbow. So I decided to cut that short or whatever. And then in this quarter, I'm probably going to do, I haven't decided yet, but I was probably thinking to do something for lower lats to really try to fucking pop that shit out. But you'd mentioned arms or rear delt. Yeah. If you take a picture or a measurements on your arms and then do some strategy like this for 90 days, then take a month off and then do another 90 days for that lagging body part, massive fucking difference. You can put on the amount of size on your arms that you would take you a year to put on in a 90-day period of time. Fucking easy as shit. Easy as fuck.
That's interesting, because if you look back at old school bodybuilding, like Arnold's era and stuff like that, a lot of those guys train twice a day. And so they're hitting the same muscle like every day or every other day. And they took a lot fewer steroids than the guys are taking now, but you can see the physiques they had back then. So it makes a lot of sense.
I was like, okay, cool. I'll just incorporate this. So now I don't really do as much at home, but I'll do. So I work out 5 days a week. I take 2 days off. So on those 5 days, it's a bodybuilding type of a split. But every day I'll incorporate, say for the arms, the quarter that I just finished. Every day I do one exercise for biceps, 3 sets, one exercise for triceps, 3 sets, somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20 reps per set. And I notice a difference. Plus that the body part just develops at such a much faster rate. I did it for rear delts for almost a year, but it was 3 or 4 times a week. Didn't matter body part, but I was like, okay, cool. Let me hit some rear delts, because I saw that picture with my friend, and I'm like, damn, my rear delts are tiny as fuck, and I don't have any triceps. So I was alternating between rear delts and triceps.
Yeah.
You had mentioned Liver King. Talk about Liver King a little bit and what your thoughts are about Liver King.
Yeah, so obviously he's implicated that he's natty, right? And that's caused a huge firestorm in the fitness community, people debating that and stuff like that. But that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. So, I mean, think about it. This guy's he's 45, somewhere in that age range, right? He's been training for 30 years. Obviously, he's got killer genetics. Whether or not he's using steroids, he's got killer genetics. You look at his physique, right? But then, I mean, you look at his diet, the way he eats, and the nutrients that he's getting. And that's not something that Americans get in their diet. I mean, almost nobody in the world gets those nutrients in their diet, and he doesn't just eat the raw liver and everything else. He's also eating one thing I specifically wanted to point out was fertilized eggs on a regular basis. And that's one of the only things out there that's been proven to block myostatin. It inhibits myostatin. And there's a substantial amount of research backing that up. Before this call, I was actually reading an article on it. And basically, to summarize this article, they did a test where they were taking fertilized egg yolk protein powder and feeding it to rats for this study. And at the end of the study, they had the two test groups, right? You got your what do they call that?
The control, and then the
control group. Yeah, you have the control group, and then you have the actual test subjects. And the test subject rats, when they butchered them basically for science, they had like double the muscle mass of the other ones. And so their conclusion from this is that the fertilized eggs were blocking the myostatin just enough that they were able to add on that additional muscle. And there was some other stuff that went into it also. But going back to the Liver King, this guy eats fertilized eggs, I think, every day. And so you think about it this way. If this guy is 45 and he started working out 30 years ago, and you think about 30 years, think about it like investing in the stock market, right? This guy's working out twice a day for 30 years, which is like we just talked about 10 seconds ago, working out the same muscle groups so often, right? He's also got a low myostatin level, and he's got a killer diet. I mean, it's not unrealistic to say he's going to gain 2.5, 3 pounds of muscle a year. I mean, 3 pounds of muscle a year isn't much, right? It'd be pretty easy for anybody to sustain that, especially when you got such a killer diet. You've got good genetics, you got a low myostatin level, and then, I mean, you just throw all those things together. Over 30 years, you could easily put on 90 pounds of muscle without ever taking anything that's unnatural. And so my vote is that he probably is natural, and I think it's largely to do with the myostatin being inhibited, because if you look at his physique, he's so well developed overall. He doesn't have any lagging muscles, and he doesn't have any muscle groups that are developed beyond the rest of them in an unreasonable way. And you look at pretty much anybody who runs gear, and they're going to have one body part they like to train a little more than everything else, and it's going to be a little bit more developed than everything else on their body, right? Or they'll have a lagging body part that they don't like to train. But he's almost perfectly balanced his muscle composition. He doesn't have overly developed muscles anywhere, and all the muscle groups that he has seem to be proportionally developed, which is kind of a characteristic of myostatin inhibition. If you look at test cows and stuff like that, you look at some bodybuilders that we know of who have low myostatin levels, and they have the same kind of look.
Interesting. That's interesting. I want to ask you about those. You said fertilized eggs.
Yeah.
And then I had some thoughts about the physique as well. So what is fertilized eggs exactly?
So most chicken farms, they'll have just female chickens, right? So fertilized eggs, there's obviously a rooster in there fertilizing the hens before they lay their eggs. So yeah, it's more natural, honestly, to eat fertilized eggs than unfertilized eggs, because naturally there'd be a rooster with the hens.
Where do you get these fucking fertilized? I want some of these fucking fertilized eggs in my diet. Where do you get these? And you said you can get like fertilized egg protein powder?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how they did it for the test group. I'm not sure how they were getting it. There is a website that sells fertilized egg protein powder. High Tech Pharmaceuticals has a patent, of course, on fertilized egg protein powder in a supplement form. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. There is a place, the company's called Yoked, where you can find the fertilized egg.
Okay. I'm pulling it up right now. I'll share this. Okay.
Right.
So,
but realistically speaking, the best way to do it is if you can find somebody who grows their own chickens and just get their fertilized eggs, natural, homegrown, organic fertilized eggs, like what the Liver King's eating.
Oh, wow. So this says they have 3 ingredients. 4-tropin. I don't know what the F that is. All natural egg yolk crumble, natural sweetener, dextrose. It's a sugar, and vanilla flavoring. I don't know what that is, but this is the fertilized eggs. This company has them though. That's what this is.
Yeah, so they're selling the fertilized egg yolks in a protein powder format. I actually just found this company like 10 minutes ago, right before this call, and I'm actually going to try their product.
But I want to know what you think. Wait, I want to know what you think of it.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a shot. But going back to the studies and looking at Liver King, that's my thesis on it, is that he's got a low myostatin level. Whether or not it's from the eggs is debatable. and you couldn't really tell unless you were to do, some scientific research on the eggs he's actually eating, and then him to see what his myostatin level is. But that would be my thought. I know a couple of guys. Well, I know one guy specifically who had a low myostatin level, and the guy hardly had to work out at all, and he just had a phenomenal physique. So it's not unrealistic to me. I mean, he's 1 in a million, obviously, whether or not he's taking gear to have a body like that, right? But I think that many years with that much work and a healthy diet with a low myostatin level, it's very easy to pull that off.
I would lean that direction too, just from my own personal experience. Like, not that I'm saying I'm like that by any stretch of the imagination, but being that I've been on like TRT in the range of say 175 milligrams to 250 milligrams for the last maybe 4 years or so. And I'm currently about 230 pounds. I'm down because I'm cutting right now from 246 pounds. And I'm like, you've seen my Instagram. I'm relatively lean, not extremely lean, but I'm relatively lean. And I just keep making progress at that level of testosterone. So when you're talking about adding a couple pounds, that's how I think about it. If I'm adding a couple pounds of tissue, lean tissue per year, like that's a win, right? Like it's a fucking win, because if you do that over the course of 10 years, you add 3 pounds, right? There's 30 effing pounds. And then if you did it over the course of a couple of decades, that's a lot more. Now, in terms of his physique, I think that it, like, I don't know if he's ever taken steroids or something, but I wouldn't be surprised if he is natural because of his diet tremendously. Like, diet is like fucking impeccable. Plus, you're having pasture raised shit, like for your cattle and shit, and then you're eating the most nutrient dense portions of it, like your spleen and the heart and the liver. Right, liver. I eat raw liver. I don't know. I think I mentioned to you right before we came on, or potentially maybe a few minutes ago. But I eat raw liver a couple times a week, maybe up to 6 times a week, 7 times a week if I remember to do it. But I eat raw liver like I had it this morning with some honey, just because it's just so incredibly nutrient dense. But when I look at his physique, nicely developed all over, but I do notice that his shoulders, arms, and quads are not necessarily the same type of development you would get if you're on gear. There isn't that like nitrogen popping of the shoulders. With at least I don't see that. Like, yes, he's lean, yes, he looks good, yes, he's got plenty of muscle, right? You're like, I'm not saying otherwise, but when you look at dudes on steroids, there tends to be more of like a cap, at least at that level of leanness, on their shoulders, right? Or in their biceps or triceps or quads. And there doesn't seem to be that at all with him. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is lean. What do you think about, I switched to primarily carnivore based diet with a little bit of fruit. And oh my goodness, I've been doing this shit for 25 years almost at this point. And having a diet that you love, if somebody's watching this or listening to this and you are like, I want to get leaner, I want to get this, work on figuring out how to manipulate your diet to something that you enjoy to do so that you can maintain it and just keep tweaking little bits and pieces to that. But having primarily meat and a little bit of fruit, and then I'll have some fats on there. Like I like using butter or ghee. I'm trying to find where to get tallow. I want to add in a bone marrow and things like that. But if you mentally imagine a giant plate of vegetables, a giant plate of your favorite fruit, and your a big steak or big fish, you're going to eat the fruit first, or the steak first, or the fish first, and the last thing you're going to have is the vegetables, right? Like if you decide to let go of the belief that you should eat vegetables, and you let that go because they're full of anti-nutrients, and you let that thing go, and you just like, okay, cool, I'm going to eat what I want that tastes delicious, that is also nutrient dense, right? The meat and the fruit. And I feel awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I don't be like, oh, I got to eat that meal, because I've had those thoughts before in the past. It's like, every meal I'm enjoying. Yeah, I never allow myself to really have a lot of red meat over the years for like 20 effing years plus. And now I'm having steaks every week. I'm having salmon, uh, and I'm having other types of fish. And this is my favorite diet. And I do not see myself changing this in any way, shape, or form. Have you ever? And I'm reading this book by a doctor right now on Carnivore Diet. Super, super interesting. I'm only like 20 or 30 pages into it, but I was like, I want to learn more about this because I'm absolutely loving this diet. Have you ever thought about doing something like that and transitioning because then it just makes it's awesome. In the book that I'm reading, he mentions how the bioavailability of nutrients in meat is so much higher than it is in vegetables. And like he still relatively early in it, so it was only like a blurb that he says he's going to talk about more in the book. But I was like, this is awesome. I don't plan on changing this. Have you ever thought about changing your diet or anything like that?
Yeah, so before my surgery, I was getting really lean really quickly, and all I did was add fruit into my diet. So I go down to the store and they have these pre-cut bowls of like cantaloupe and honeydew and watermelon and pineapple, stuff like that, right? So I would just go buy these, and since you're at work, you're eating out of a lunchbox, it was really important to get that like prepped kind of portion, right? So what I was doing every morning is I was having like this Tupperware full of that fruit with some cottage cheese, and then I would add that fruit in like mid-afternoon before I went to the gym. All I did was add the fruit into my diet, so I wasn't focused on taking anything out of my diet. I just added the fruit in, and I noticed my energy levels go up, and I started leaning out really quickly. I stopped being hungry for carbs, especially stuff like pizza, and so that it really did help clean my diet up without mentally having to deny myself of whatever it was I was craving, right? Because the cravings disappeared and my energy level went up, and I was leaning out all at the same time. It was like a self-curing issue, right? So that's actually what I'm doing now is I'm going back on the fruit and meat diet. And I'm one of those weird people that has to eat a lot of red meat for some reason. I don't know what it is in red meat specifically, but if I don't eat enough of it, I start getting canker sores really bad. And so I have to eat it a few times a week in order not to get those. If I don't eat the red meat, I get the canker sores and I start feeling really sickly. So the red meat and the fruit is my focus in the diet right now with eggs. And I haven't figured out where to get fertilized eggs locally yet, but I'm working on that. So those are
Nope.
kind of like my core foods right now.
Any fish?
I do eat quite a bit of fish. Yeah, actually, my girlfriend was just making some tuna a minute ago. Or, I mean, not tuna, trout that we caught.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's dope. You guys caught some trout and you're cooking it up? Oh, wow. That's awesome. I've never tried to do that. That's super cool. What about some raw liver? Have you ever tried that?
I haven't tried raw liver. I'm a little bit squeamish on that, but I did order Liver King's liver capsules, so I'm waiting for those. I'm going to see how that turns out.
You should try the raw liver. Grab it this weekend when you do your grocery shopping, if that's when you do your grocery shopping, and just try it. Like do a little video on it on your Instagram, and just try it just to see what you think. Just to see. The first time you try it, you're gonna want to vomit it up, like as it's in your mouth. But I just tried it with salt and pepper the first time, and it was like trying to throw it up. But now I actually kind of enjoy it.
So
Like
Liver King eats his with, what is it, olive oil and honey?
I try it with honey. It's I get raw, like some raw fucking organic honey shit, and the honey and the liver, it's actually pretty good. It's not bad at all. And it's so nutrient dense. Like I've become that demented that the reason I'm doing it is because it's so nutrient dense.
This is the only reason to do any of this stuff, right?
Yeah, I want longevity. I want to be able to like live longer. Dude, this has been a ton of fun. I think this is about time. We should wrap things up. But for people who are listening or going to watch this in the future, how is the best way for people to get in touch with you? I know you have your own brand too, so why don't you talk a little bit about your brand and where people can get in touch, contact you?
So if you go to my website, DadBod2.fit, that's kind of like a hub you can find everything off of. My YouTube channel is DadBod 2.0. I'm getting ready to launch a second channel, DadBod 2 Fit. It's going to be more of a broad focus. DadBod 2.0 is more focused on PEDs. And then I have my supplement company, Biomuscle Labs. So biomusclelabs.com for that.
Dope. And what is your Instagram? DadBod 2.0?
DadBod 2.0.
DadBod 2.0. Oh, okay. Okay. Cool. Awesome. Brian, thank you for coming on. Thank you for being vulnerable enough to share your story around this, because we know people in the fitness industry that will, go through those things and keep it to themselves, and they won't share it with other people because they're insecure about it. And so I acknowledge you for taking the courage and I'm using the word courage, right? You can say whatever the fuck you want, but a lot of people don't fucking do that, right? They'll go through that and they'll do it and they won't tell anybody, and they'll hide it because they feel like ashamed or scared to tell people. And to go through and share that with people so that more people can like acknowledge that and take care of that stuff if they're going through the same thing. That's awesome. Appreciate you guys. If anybody is listening or watching this and you want to help out, you enjoy this type of stuff, if you're listening to it on a podcast platform, take a second, leave a review. It is super, super helpful. All the podcast platforms, if you want to find any of my stuff, thetriggeredbrand.com, or Sam Stolt on most of the platforms. Appreciate you guys. And let me figure out how to end the broadcast.